The circulatory system can be thought of as a double loop system. The first loop collecting oxygen from the lungs and the second loop supplying this oxygen to the rest of the body. Blood travels first from the heart to the lungs along a major blood vessel called the pulmonary artery. This artery leads to a network of capillaries inside the lungs which collect oxygen. The capillaries are connected to the pulmonary vein, which then carries oxygenated or oxygen-rich blood back to the heart. In the second part of the circulatory system, blood travels from the heart to all other parts of the body. It leaves the heart in the main artery, called the aorta. This artery divides into a network of smaller blood vessels and capillaries. Blood passing through the capillaries supplies oxygen to all parts of the body. The oxygen-poor blood then returns to the heart along the main veins, the venae cavae.
The line on the screen makes the same pattern many times over. Each pattern represents one heartbeat. The first peak in the pattern is displayed as the upper heart contracts. The largest peak is displayed as the lower heart contracts, and the last peak appears as the lower heart relaxes again. Your heart rate can be worked out by measuring similar distances between the patterns. The shape of the patterns tells the doctor about your heart's health.
People with blood type AB can only donate to people who also have type AB. Those with blood type A can donate to those with type A or type AB blood. People with blood type B can donate to those with either blood type B or blood type AB. If you have blood type O, you're called a universal donor. This means you can donate blood to someone in any other blood group. If you have blood type AB, you're called a universal recipient. This means you can receive blood from someone in any other blood group. People with blood type A can receive from people with blood type A or blood type O. Those with blood type B can receive from those with type B or type O blood. People with blood type O can only receive from others who also have blood type O.
When bacteria enter the body, antibodies are formed in response to foreign proteins or antigens on the bacteria. The body designs the antibodies to destroy specific bacteria that have entered with food or air through the mouth or through a cut in the skin. Where the antibody meets its corresponding antigen, the antibody attaches itself to it. In this way, the harmful bacteria become covered by antibodies, and this neutralizes their harmful effects. A white blood cell moves towards bacteria, attracted to them by the chemicals that they release. The cell makes contact and wraps itself around the bacteria, totally engulfing them in a process known as phagocytosis. Chemicals are now released inside the white blood cell to destroy the bacteria.
Each heartbeat consists of 3 stages. In the first stage, blood flows into the upper and lower chambers of the heart. During the next stage of the heartbeat, the lower chambers of the heart contract, squeezing the blood out of this part of the heart. As this happens, the valves which separate the upper and lower chambers close to ensure that blood leaves the heart rather than being pushed back into the upper regions. The closing of these valves creates the first loud lub sound. In the third stage, the lower chambers of the heart relax and the valves at the exit to the heart close, preventing the blood that has just left from flowing back into the heart. As they close, they make the second, sharper dup sound. The lower chamber of the heart contracts and squeezes blood through the semilunar valve at the heart's exit. The high pressure of the blood forces open the 3 flexible pockets of this valve, allowing blood to leave the heart. As the heart relaxes in between beats, blood begins to flow back towards the heart. This backflow fills the 3 pockets and forces them to close. As blood flows from the upper chamber of the heart to the lower chamber, it passes through the funnel-shaped bicuspid valve. Blood flowing in the right direction passes easily through the valve as the heart relaxes between beats. When the lower chamber contracts, blood starts to flow backwards and catches against the valve flaps, forcing them shut. The cords attached to the flaps prevent them from turning inside out completely.
Your body is continually absorbing oxygen for energy release and expelling waste carbon dioxide. Your heart pumps oxygen-rich blood around your body, which absorbs the oxygen and exchanges it for waste carbon dioxide. The oxygen-poor blood is then pumped back to your heart and into your lungs, where the carbon dioxide is expelled and fresh oxygen is absorbed as you breathe. Oxygen-poor blood from your heart flows through tiny blood vessels or capillaries surrounding the alveoli in your lungs. As it does so, it releases carbon dioxide and absorbs oxygen. This oxygen-rich blood then travels back to your heart to be pumped around your body. The cycle is constantly being repeated as carbon dioxide is removed from the alveoli when you breathe out, and fresh oxygen is brought into the alveoli when you breathe in. Oxygen-rich blood from your heart flows through tiny blood vessels or capillaries that supply all the body's tissue cells. As it does so, oxygen passes from the blood into the tissue cells. At the same time, carbon dioxide passes out of the tissue cells into the blood. This oxygen-poor blood is then pumped by the heart to the lungs, where it can release waste carbon dioxide and absorb a fresh supply of oxygen as you breathe. An irritation somewhere in your air passages triggers a cough. Your glottis is open as you breathe air into your lungs. The glottis closes, trapping air in your lungs, causing a build-up of pressure. The glottis suddenly opens, releasing a rush of air from your lungs and out through your mouth, taking the irritation with it. Before a hiccup, your breathing is quiet and regular, with the glottis open and the diaphragm contracting rhythmically. An irritation in the diaphragm causes it to change its movement and to contract spasmodically. This prompts a deep inspiration of air. As air rushes into the lungs, the distinctive hiccuping sound occurs as the glottis snaps shut. Sensitive skin in your nose is stimulated by an irritation. This triggers a deep inspiration of air, which passes through the open glottis and into your lungs. The glottis closes, trapping air in your lungs, causing a build-up of pressure. The glottis opens suddenly and air rushes out of your lungs. Your tongue blocks the back of your mouth, so the air is routed through your nose, clearing the irritation. An excess of carbon dioxide in your body makes you feel tired and triggers the yawn reflex. The mouth opens wide, allowing a deep inspiration of air. Oxygen-rich air passes into your lungs from where it is absorbed into your blood. At the same time, excess carbon dioxide is removed from the body as you breathe out.
When you bend your arm towards your shoulder, the biceps muscle contracts, becoming shorter and wider. Meanwhile, the triceps muscle relaxes. When you want to straighten your arm downward, the triceps muscle contracts. It pulls down on the lower arm bones. Meanwhile, the biceps muscle relaxes. When a baby is born, only parts of its skeleton are made of bone. The bony parts can be seen on these X-ray illustrations. The spaces in between contain cartilage, the tough but flexible material that you can feel supporting your nose and ears. As a child grows and its skeleton develops, the cartilage is gradually replaced by bone. By the age of 20 years, the fully grown skeleton is made entirely of bone. A hinge joint permits forward and backward movement in one direction only. It does not allow sideways movement. A pivot joint allows one bone to move around the other from side to side. A ball and socket joint permits movement in all directions, backward and forward, side to side, twisting, and any combination of the three. As you bend backwards, your muscles pull on the small pieces of bone that stick out at the back of the spine. As you bend forwards, these muscles relax. During both movements, each disc of cartilage in the backbone's joints is squashed, allowing backward or forward movement. The muscles at the back of your spine pull to keep you standing upright. As you bend over to the right, your muscles pull on the small pieces of bone that stick out from the right side of each vertebra. As you bend to the left bone pieces are pulled. During both movements, each disc of cartilage in the backbone's joints is squashed, allowing the sideways movement. When you stand up straight, your muscles are pulling equally on both sides of the vertebrae.
Sensory receptors in your skin detect any changes happening outside your body. These stimulate nerve impulses that are sent along nerve cells called sensory neurons to the interneurons in the central nervous system. The interneurons process the information they have received and pass it on to the motor neurons. These carry nerve impulses to your muscles, causing them to contract. Your heart rate is the number of times your heart beats per minute. During rest, your heart beats at a steady rate, but as you start to exercise, your sympathetic nervous system speeds up your heart rate. This increases blood flow to your muscles, supplying them with more oxygen and energy. When you stop exercising, your parasympathetic system slows your heart rate so that it returns to its normal resting level. The sympathetic nervous system enlarges your pupil in dim light so that you can see better. The opposite happens in bright light as the parasympathetic system shrinks the pupil to protect your eye from the glare. A reflex action is an automatic response to a stimulus like heat or pain. Your body automatically pulls away from such dangers without you having to think about it. The hand accidentally hits a sharp point which stimulates a pain receptor in the skin. Nerve impulses are sent along the sensory neuron to the spinal cord, where they are processed and immediately sent back along the motor neuron. The nerve impulses then enter the biceps muscle in the arm, causing the muscle to contract and pull the hand away from the source of pain. Something stimulates a pain receptor in your skin. Automatically, nerve impulses move along a sensory neuron to the spinal cord, where they are transmitted through an interneuron to a motor neuron. The motor neuron carries nerve impulses to a muscle, causing it to pull your body away from the cause of the pain.
The outer ear consists of the auricle or pinna, which is visible on the side of your head, the ear passage and the eardrum. Sound waves travel through the outer ear to reach the delicate hearing mechanism inside the bones of your skull. The middle ear is an air-filled cavity within the bones of your skull. It contains the ossicles, the three smallest bones in your body, which are called the hammer, anvil and stirrup. The middle ear is separated from the inner ear by a membrane stretching across the oval window. The inner ear is a fluid-filled cavity buried inside the bones of your skull. It contains the semicircular canals, which are responsible for balance, and the cochlea, which is responsible for hearing. Nodding moves the fluid in the front semicircular canal. This is detected by tiny sensory hairs in the ampulla, which send nerve impulses to the brain to keep your body balanced. When you turn your head, the movement is carried to fluid in the horizontal semicircular canal. The ampulla at the base of this canal sends nerve impulses to your brain to balance your body. Tilting your head from side to side affects the fluid in the rear semicircular canal. This movement is transmitted to sensory hairs in the ampulla, which send messages to your brain where your balance is adjusted. When you change your position, sensory receptors in the vestibule respond to the pull of gravity and send messages to your brain telling it which way up you are. When you hear sounds, all the delicate mechanisms in your outer, middle and inner ear are working together. The auricle collects sound waves and funnels them down the ear passage. The sound waves hit the eardrum, causing it to vibrate. The vibrations are transmitted through the three small bones in the middle ear, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Vibrations pass from the stirrup through the membrane across the oval window to reach the cochlea in the inner ear. Here, sound vibrations are changed into nerve impulses. These travel along the cochlear nerve to the brain, where they are interpreted as sounds. The middle ear is one part of your hearing mechanism. It is positioned between the outer ear and inner ear, and its job is to transfer sound vibrations from one to the other. Sound waves in the outer ear hit the eardrum and cause it to vibrate. These vibrations are transferred to your middle ear via the hammer. The vibrating hammer moves the anvil, which in turn moves the stirrup. The stirrup vibrates against the membrane across the oval window, causing the inner ear fluid to move. Now the sound vibrations have been transferred from the outer ear to the inner ear. The vibrating stirrup moves against the membrane across the oval window, making the inner ear fluid vibrate. These vibrations stimulate the sensory hairs in the cochlea to produce nerve impulses. The nerve impulses travel along the cochlear nerve to the brain, where they are interpreted as sounds. Different sounds affect different sensory hairs. For example, a high-pitched sound like this one stimulates the hairs at the entrance to the cochlea. A low-pitched sound like this one stimulates the hairs at the top of the cochlea. You see the world through your eyes, which take in rays of light that have been bounced or reflected off objects. An object reflects rays of light that are bent as they enter the eye through the cornea. They travel through the pupil and through the lens, which brings them into focus on the retina. The image so produced is upside down and smaller than the original object. When light hits the retina, it stimulates light-sensitive cells to generate a pattern of nerve impulses that are sent along the optic nerve to the brain, where the messages are interpreted, allowing you to see.
You smell something as you breathe in air. The air carries odours through your nostrils and into your nasal cavity. During this journey, the air passes over the olfactory receptors, where any odours are detected. Odours cause olfactory receptors to produce nerve impulses, which pass to the olfactory bulb. These nerve impulses then travel along the olfactory nerve to the brain, where they are interpreted as smells. Meanwhile, the air you breathed in continues its journey down the windpipe. Your eye is moved from side to side by two different muscles. One is attached to the left side of the eyeball, and when it contracts, it pulls the eye to the left, or your right as you watch the screen. When the muscle attached to the right side of the eyeball contracts, it pulls the eye to the right. Your eye is moved up and down by four muscles. The most important two, the prime movers, are attached to the top and bottom of the eyeball. When the top muscle contracts, it pulls the eye up, and when the bottom one contracts, it pulls the eye down.
The candlestick and the face are in fact the same picture. Your brain does not know which of the two to see, so leaves you to choose. Both lines are in fact the same length, although the top line may have appeared longer. The inward-pointing arrows on the upper line seem to elongate it, while the outward-pointing arrows on the lower one seem to shorten it. The brain is fooled. If you start to inspect this image from one end, it seems to make sense. However, as your eyes approach the centre of the image, you realize that it simply does not work. The central plank that appears on the left does not exist on the right. You have been tricked. The diagonal lines confuse your brain, making the inner circles appear to be flattened slightly at the points where the diagonals meet. In fact, there are 3 perfect circles on your screen.
Your eyes are producing tears all the time, not just when you cry. Tears moisten and cleanse your eyes before draining away into your nasal cavity. Tears are produced in the lacrimal gland and flow through tiny ducts onto the surface of your eye. As they do so, your eyelids close and you blink, spreading the tears across the front of your eye. Any excess tears collect in the lacrimal sac before draining down a duct into your nasal cavity.
While food is chewed inside the mouth, it is also moistened by saliva. When broken down into sufficiently small, moist pieces, the food is pushed to the back of the throat and swallowed. Muscles in the wall of the esophagus push the ball of chewed food towards the stomach in a process called peristalsis. Food is mixed with acidic juices produced by the stomach wall that help break it down. Stomach wall muscles also contract, crushing and grinding the food. The food then passes into the small intestine, where digestive substances called enzymes complete the process of digestion. Useful food finally enters the bloodstream in a process called absorption. The large intestine carries food that cannot be digested in the small intestine to the outside. As this indigestible food is gradually pushed along, excess water is absorbed into the bloodstream, and the waste is formed into feces by the time it reaches the rectum. Feces are stored in the rectum before they are pushed out of the anus. Undigested food from the small intestine enters the first part of the large intestine, the cecum, in liquid form. As well as waste food, this liquid contains dead cells from inside the intestine and bacteria. From the cecum, the liquid waste moves into the colon. As the waste liquid moves slowly along the colon, it dries out because water and salts are drawn away through the colon wall and into the blood system. This process ensures that the body does not lose too much water. The remaining wastes now form into feces. These are stored in the rectum, the short final section of the large intestine. When the rectum is full, the feces are pushed out of the body. Partially digested food called chyme enters the small intestine from the stomach. Here it is mixed with bile from the liver and pancreatic juice from the pancreas. These two juices contain digestive substances, including enzymes, that finish the process of digestion. There are also enzymes in the lining of the small intestine. Digestive juices break down food into very simple substances, which are then absorbed through the lining of the small intestine. The small intestine is a long, coiled tube, and its lining is folded. This provides a large surface area through which food passes easily. Food is then carried away in the bloodstream to other parts of the body. The digestion and absorption of food are now complete. All that remains at the end of the small intestine is indigestible food material that is of no use to the body. This leftover waste passes into the large intestine from where it leaves the body. Food travels from your throat to your stomach in about 6 seconds. Liquids take around 1 or 2 seconds. Once inside the stomach, the food is soaked with juices that are produced by glands in the stomach wall. Muscles in the stomach wall crush the food into tiny pieces and mix it with stomach juices. These juices contain enzymes, substances that digest some of the food, and hydrochloric acid, which helps the enzymes work. The result of all this activity is a creamy liquid called chyme. Once food has been turned into liquid chyme, it is pushed out of the stomach. The ring of muscle around the stomach's exit relaxes to let small amounts of chyme into the small intestine.
The liver keeps the level of sugar in your blood constant. After blood reaches the liver from the small intestine, liver cells remove excess sugar and store it. If there is not enough sugar in your blood, the liver releases some from its store back into the bloodstream. The liver processes some poisons in your blood to make them harmless. When blood entering the liver contains harmful substances, the liver cells remove them and convert them into harmless substances. The cleansed blood then flows back to the heart. The liver helps maintain a stable body temperature of around 37 degrees centigrade or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Many chemical reactions that generate heat take place in the liver. This heat warms blood to the correct temperature as it passes through the liver. The liver produces a liquid called bile, which contains waste products from broken down red blood cells and salts that aid digestion. Bile passes from the liver to the small intestine. Any excess bile is stored in the gallbladder. 4 sets of muscles are responsible for biting and chewing. The 2 that you can see here work together to close the mouth when biting. 2 smaller, deeper muscles produce the side-to-side chewing movements that grind food between the teeth. To help you swallow, food inside your mouth is chewed up and moulded into a slippery ball called a bolus. The tongue pushes this upwards against the roof of the mouth, forcing the bolus backwards into the throat. When the bolus touches the back of the throat, several things happen automatically. The soft palate rises to prevent food going into the nose. The epiglottis covers the windpipe to stop the bolus going down towards the lungs, and the throat muscles squeeze the bolus down into the esophagus. A wave of muscle contraction passes down the esophagus. This is called peristalsis. Peristalsis pushes the bolus down the esophagus and into the stomach. This can take between 4 and 8 seconds.
Peristalsis is the process by which food is passed through the tube-like organs of the digestive system. These tubes consist of 2 layers of muscles, an outer lengthways muscle layer and an inner circular muscle layer. The alternate contraction of these layers creates a wave of muscular movement that squeezes food all the way from the mouth to the intestines. Blood is carried into the kidneys by large blood vessels called renal arteries, 1 to each kidney. Inside the kidneys, all unwanted waste materials, together with some salts and water, are removed from the blood to form urine. The waste-free blood is carried out of the kidneys through the renal veins. Urine that is made in the kidneys trickles down the ureters to the bladder. The bladder expands as it fills with urine. Messages are sent from the stretching bladder wall to the brain, making you feel the need to urinate. A ring-like muscle around the urethra is relaxed, and urine leaves the body.
The cortex is the pale red outer part of the kidney, protected by a covering or capsule. Both the cortex and the medulla contain millions of tiny tubes called nephrons that produce urine. The reddish-brown middle part of the kidney is called the medulla. It is made up of cone-shaped blocks of tissue known as pyramids. Urine is concentrated here in tiny tubes called nephrons. Located on the inside of the kidney, the pelvis looks like a flattened funnel. Urine that is produced in the cortex and medulla collects in the pelvis before it drains into the ureter on its way to the bladder. Reproduction begins with sexual intercourse as a man's penis enters a woman's vagina. Next, muscular contractions push sperm from the testes along the sperm duct to the seminal vesicles and prostate gland. Here, the sperm are mixed with a fluid that is full of nutrients and chemicals to produce semen. This passes along the urethra and out of the penis into the woman's vagina. Once inside the woman, sperms swim through the cervix and uterus to reach the fallopian tube, where a single sperm might fertilize an egg. This is the first stage in the creation of a new baby. The menstrual cycle starts with the menstrual period, which occurs from day 1 to day 5. During this time, blood and dead cells from the lining of the uterus flow through the cervix and out of the vagina. By day 6, menstruation has finished and a new egg has begun to ripen inside the ovary. At the same time, the lining of the uterus thickens to create a receptive environment for a fertilized egg. By day 14, the egg is mature enough to be released into the fallopian tube. After its release, the egg travels along the fallopian tube towards the uterus. The lining of the uterus continues to thicken, ready to receive a fertilized egg. If the egg is not fertilized within about 24 hours of its release, the uterus lining is eventually shed through the vagina as menstruation begins again. A woman's egg is released from her ovary into the fallopian tube. At the same time, millions of sperm from a man swim along the fallopian tube to meet the egg. Fertilization takes place when a sperm penetrates the egg. The fertilized egg starts to develop as it undergoes repeated cell division on its journey to the uterus. Finally, the fertilized egg implants into the lining of the uterus, from which it absorbs the nourishment it needs to grow into a baby. A sperm carrying an X chromosome swims towards an egg also carrying an X chromosome. When the sperm arrives, it penetrates the egg and fertilizes it. This fertilized egg contains 2 identical sex chromosomes, X and X, and will develop into a girl. A sperm carrying a Y chromosome penetrates an egg with an X chromosome. As the sperm fertilizes the egg, the 2 different sex chromosomes combine. This fertilized egg with both X and Y chromosomes will develop into a boy.
An endocrine gland releases chemical messages called hormones into the bloodstream, where they are carried to the body's tissues. Once in the tissues, the hormones attach to cells that are sensitive to them. These target cells respond to the presence of the hormones, which then influence the cell function.
Lymph drains from tissues around the body into lymphatic capillaries, which carry it to larger lymphatic vessels. It is then carried to lymph nodes, where it is filtered and any harmful bacteria are removed. Once cleansed, the lymph re-enters the bloodstream and is carried to the heart. Lymph flows along lymphatic vessels into the lymph nodes. Here it is cleansed by special cells called lymphocytes in the outer region and macrophages in the inner region. These cells identify harmful bacteria and either engulf them or produce killer chemicals called antibodies to destroy them. Once the cleansing process is finished, the lymph is carried by lymphatic vessels to the bloodstream.
Your body's cells are constantly supplied with food and oxygen from the bloodstream. The blue arrows represent food and the red arrows oxygen. Parts of the food are used as fuel by the cells to release energy for vital functions. Other parts are used to maintain and repair the cell itself. The energy from food is released inside thousands of cell parts called mitochondria in a process that requires oxygen. Carbon dioxide, which is represented by the green arrows, is a waste product of this process. The energy is used to fuel all the chemical reactions that maintain and repair the cell, and to provide heat for body warmth. Changes in body temperature are detected by the hypothalamus, a control centre in the brain that sends messages to other parts of the body. If the temperature rises, messages are sent to the skin, causing it to lose heat by sweating. If the temperature falls, the muscles receive messages and begin to shiver, so generating extra heat. Changes in the amount of sugar in the blood are detected by the pancreas. If the level increases, the pancreas releases a chemical called insulin, which stimulates the liver to store sugar. If the level falls, a chemical called glucagon is released, which stimulates the liver to release sugar back into the bloodstream. Changes in the body's water levels are detected by the hypothalamus in the brain. If water levels fall, the hypothalamus sends messages to make us feel thirsty. The pituitary gland also releases a chemical which causes the kidneys to release less water in the form of urine. If the water level rises, the kidneys make more urine.
As you walk, your heart rate is constant at about 80 beats per minute. Your heart rate can be measured by detecting the electrical signals sent by your heart and displaying them as patterns on the screen of an electrocardiograph or ECG machine. As you start to run, your heart beats faster and more powerfully to increase the amount of blood being pumped around your body. The electrocardiogram shows that the heart is beating faster. The exact heart rate depends on three main factors: how fast you run, how fit you are, and how old you are. As you walk, your breathing rate is constant at around 20 breaths a minute. This rate can be displayed on a graph if you breathe into a machine called a spirometer that measures the volume of air breathed in and out. Each peak on the graph represents a breath in, and each trough a breath out. As you start to run, you breathe more quickly and deeply, so that the body absorbs more oxygen and expels more carbon dioxide. These breathing rate changes are represented by the increased closeness and depth of the waves on the graph.
When you have not eaten for several hours, your stomach becomes empty and unstretched, and there is very little food being carried in your blood. This information is sent to the part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which controls appetite. The hypothalamus sends out messages that make you feel hungry. Seeing or smelling food adds to this feeling. When you eat, the hypothalamus stops the messages, and your hunger disappears. When you have not drunk fluids for several hours, your mouth and tongue become dry. Also, your blood becomes more concentrated because it contains less water. This information is received by the hypothalamus in the brain. The hypothalamus sends out messages in return that make you feel thirsty. Once you have drunk a thirst-quenching liquid, such as water, the messages stop and your thirst disappears. Your body grows from the day you are born until you are about 20 years old. At the end of your first year, your arms and legs are short in proportion to your large head and body. When you are 3 years old, your arms and legs are growing faster, and you are more in proportion. By the age of 6 years, you have reached about 3/4 your eventual height. And at 14, your rapidly growing body is more like an adult's. At 20 years of age, you are fully grown. The surface of your skin is constantly flaking away and being replaced from below. The process of renewal starts in the bottom basal layer of the epidermis. Here cells divide and are pushed towards the spiny layer. As more cells divide, they are pushed to the third epidermal layer, the granular layer. As cells continue to move outwards, they become flatter and acquire a tough, waterproof material called keratin. By the time the cells reach the outer horny layer, they are completely flat and dead. These are the protective flakes that are eventually shed, to be replaced by more cells from below. As a new hair grows from the hair bulb, at the bottom of the hair follicle, the older hair is pushed out.
Cells in the nail root are constantly dividing and multiplying. These cells become hard and transparent and are pushed towards the tip of the finger. As they are pushed further, the nail becomes longer. When you are awake, your brain is extremely active, controlling your body and its actions. Your heart rate, blood pressure and rate of energy usage are at regular levels, and this is reflected by intense electrical signals called brain waves. When you're in a state of deep sleep, your body functions slow down considerably. The electrical signals sent out by your brain become less intense, and their rhythm slows. Your breathing rate and heart rate become irregular during dream or REM sleep. The electrical signals from your brain are intense at this time and resemble those sent when you are awake. There are 3 main stages in a sleeping cycle, starting with wakefulness. Alternating periods of deep sleep and dream sleep follow until an average adult wakes up after sleeping for around 8 hours. During an average 8-hour period of sleep, an adult will slip from deep sleep into increasing periods of dream sleep every 90 minutes. The periods of deep sleep will therefore decrease towards the morning. You are most likely to dream during REM or rapid eye movement sleep. Towards the morning, the amount of dream sleep increases compared with deep sleep. Dream sleep makes up around 1/4 of an adult's total sleeping time. The cell you are watching is slowly dividing into 2 identical daughter cells. This is achieved through the process of cell division, in which all the different parts of a cell duplicate and separate into 2.